Hi, guys. Welcome back. David Feldman-Makrias here. And today, what we're going to be talking about is going through one of the vendor's ROI reports for a specific niche regarding lead gen. The industry in question is the automotive industry. So, we're going to be looking at what vendor reports look like, what kind of ROI that they give, and do their metrics actually matter, or are they just non substantial and not pushing things in the right direction? Okay, so let's just get into it right now. When I look at this, I have the dashboard pulled up. You noticed I have a couple different things blurred for privacy. You want to keep privacy of the client, privacy of the overall company and vendors and metrics. But basically, this is this type of information I see a lot. I see custom dashboards made to show some sort of ROI. The problem is in a lot of different industries, not especially when it comes to lead generation, not all companies are created equal as far as the type of ROI or revenue or return that they're getting. So what I like to assume too, when looking at different industries, not just the automotive industry, but it could be any bigger industry where, each location, especially if it's a larger volume location, might get into the 10, 15, 20, $25 million in annual revenue. When you get to that point, doesn't matter if you're the marketing director, the internal marketing person, someone, digital marketing agency, a freelancer, however you work with the company, you're not, most likely, you're not going to be the only one that works with the company. I've seen a lot of different roles where marketing directors actually establish the relationship between a lot of these vendors. I also see where a lot of vendors are just in on their own with the ownership or with top end management, what have you. So typically, you're not going to be the only one working with it. But the great thing, and I think the thing that makes any marketing consultant, any marketing expert really, really powerful is their ability to be able to quantify and analyze data. So when we quantify and analyze data, how do we do that? Basically, what am I saying here? How are we going to determine the validity of this ROI report from this vendor to see if it actually makes sense? I'm going to show you a couple different ways of how I determine validity of things that really sound good and really look good in a custom dashboard report, but maybe aren't as impactful from a holistic standpoint, and really if this vendor is doing a good job or not. So let's get into it. This report, there's a bunch of different reports in here, and it's almost like any person in management or marketing or whatever, do we really need another dashboard? I mean, it's really just something to justify some existence, but I don't even know how good dashboards are anymore, because when you become like really engulfed in a business, another dashboard to log into is not really what you need. Maybe you need like your primary dashboards, whatever your CRM or customer relationship management is, your sales log, and maybe some analytics and marketing. You don't want another dashboard, right? And every vendor and their mom has a dashboard for you. Sometimes I like just reports sent to my email so I can quickly skim them, or take the key points, plug them into ChatGPT or something like that, and have them summarize the key points for me. Great use of AI as well if you need a lot of information crunched at one time. But what we're looking at right now is for an actual car dealer, and we're looking at what's called VDPs by day, last 3 months. So VDP, for those of you who are not familiar, is a vehicle detail page, very similar to like a product detail page. If I was going to look at a car and I actually click on the car and view the car, the price, all the features, things like that on a website, well, then that is going to be a vehicle detail page. Very similar to if I go on Amazon and I search for an umbrella to buy and I click the umbrella that I want and I'm about to check out and add that to cart, that would be a product detail page. So overall, pretty similar. So what this vendor is claiming to do is drive traffic from competitor. Basically, it's analyzing competitor traffic and then driving that traffic to the actual client store in question. So basically, taking from your competitors, they have algorithms and they have custom software that scrapes the competitors and all this stuff. It all kind of means the same thing. So what exactly are their ROI metrics? One thing I do like about this report, it's very simple and easy to understand. You can see a live graphical view, and then you see some overview metrics, which is nice. You see how many VDPs they generated, what their cost per VDP is, which is interesting. So it takes their monthly budget and divides it by what they got. So you have some sort of return on investment metric. That's your ROI right here, right? What did it cost versus what did I get? Um, it's sort of similar to ROI or ROAS, but that's what we're looking at. Assists. So this is the product name. The assist would be how much. I'm gonna go with how much influence it had on selling a product, on selling a vehicle, and it's determining if that vehicle was online, it drove traffic to it, and then the vehicle became offline, or the company actually took it off. And then we have another return metric, which is cost per shopper session, meaning out of all the traffic that they drove for the monthly marketing budget for this vendor, how much did that cost per an actual engaged shopper? So it's nice to see. It's like, okay, we're only spending $1, right? $9, $48. That looks good. And this is the current month. And then they have last month's too. I like that they have two different date range breakouts. That's really nice to see. And then you can see overall stuff here. I mean, 4 or 5 major bullet points is really all you need to justify. So right now, I like the way they justify it because they define what their deliverable is. Their deliverable is a VDP, it's a vehicle detail page, and then they're defining how much it costs for that to happen. Now, something I'd like to see, though, to determine the validity of it is how many goals or conversions or whatever did that drive? Like, how many types of lead generation stats did that drive? And that's going to be more like chunky of the ROI. Again, the overall tangible result we're looking for in this is leads. And none of this is leads. A VDP, a vehicle detail page, is not a lead. I would like to see leads generated. And okay, what are we doing right before them? This VDP is what? It's a vehicle detail page, and it's a view, right? We're driving a view. We're driving website traffic. But what happened to that website traffic? Did it convert? Did it convert reasonably compared to our other sources of traffic? And if it did, and we actually are seeing new leads generated, that's how we're going to determine the validity. So how do we go about that? How can we see, did this actual vendor drive meaningful leads? What we're going to do to determine that is we're going to use some third-party software, Google Analytics. Many of you might be familiar. Of course, there's other custom dashboards. There's a lot of other custom softwares, but I like using analytics because it's an industry standard. You know, pretty much every website and franchise you can use it. It's a free tool. Google has some really good value in it. Am I going to say that it's 100% accurate? Absolutely not. Am I going to say that we should rely on it like the most? I think it gives us a good magnifying glass into what's actually happening and working, and that way we can see what real influence did this have. I do like how this report broke out like, okay, here's the left hand item, like, okay, that's the website traffic we drove, and then a return metric, also an assist, meaning we influenced this many vehicles to leave the website, which is all really good stuff to see. But let's dive deeper. I want to know what type of engagement, like, were people calling after they came from this source? Were they interacting? Were they scrolling? Were they clicking on buttons? Were they valuing their vehicle? What were they doing? So that's what we're going to find out right now. I'm going to jump into Google Analytics, and then we're going to determine a closer snapshot of the validity. All right. So now I'm in Google Analytics for the specific client. I'm looking at the last 28 days of traffic. Notice I have some things blurred here. So what I am looking at, I'm looking at, this might do something. Hold on. Okay, let me back out to what I needed. Awesome. Okay, so what I'm looking at is GA4, and I'm looking at reports. And in these reports, I'm looking at the traffic acquisition report because it's very similar to the source medium report in UA3, or what I abbreviate to GA3. Again, at the time of this recording, GA3 is still collecting data. However, that's going to be changing in the next 2 months. It is May 11th of 2023. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at a report that should tell me about overall traffic, but also what that traffic is doing when they get to the site. And that's what I really want to know. So because one of the major holes in the previous report is they had this assists, right? Like, oh, we generated the traffic to these pages, and then that traffic, like what happened to it? Well, it left the website. Yeah, but there's a lot of different marketing going to all these different products. So who takes credit for it? And that's what we're going to try and determine now and have a better insight. Am I going to tell you an exact, like, this is the one that took credit for that sale? No, but I think it's pretty impossible to do that, at least at this point. But we're going to see which one had a large percent of influence, and did this vendor actually have a large percent of influence on the sale? And we can do that by looking at the events and conversions that it actually generated. So let's do that. I'm in GA4 and I'm going to move my little face. So then what am I going to do here? I want to create a custom comparison. And I did save something here. Hold on. All right, so I'm still playing around with GA4. I'm not the best, but what I like to do to figure this out is I'm going to click this pencil. I'm going to go to Customize Report, and then within Dimensions, I want to add something called Events, and I'll call it Event Name, and that's fine. So now in my Dimensions, because it's a little bit funky to deal with the reporting in this table, I want to look at very, very specifics of this source of traffic. So one thing that you might normally do is go to the source medium traffic, and this is the actual source of traffic of the vendor we're analyzing. What we can see is that it is the fourth top traffic source for overall new users, which looks great. Now, some other instances you could see on quality of traffic, like as you move from left to right, you could see the sort of traffic, what the behavior was of that traffic, and then what events it actually hunkered down in. So when I see here, I'm looking at, okay, it has about 3,200 total users generated to the site out of 27,000. So that's about a little over 10%. 10% of the traffic. About average engagement time is 1 minute and 12. Now that's different than average session duration of GA3. I just had a really good idea. All right, keep. Sometimes you just got to stop and write the ideas down. So this GA3 versus GA4. When we look at this, your average session duration is going to be different than your average engagement time. What I've seen is the average session duration is actually much longer. That's from UA3. GA3, UA3, I don't know which one to call it. I'm going to call them both. Old analytics. New analytics GA4, it shows average engagement time, which is not quite the same thing. It is a little bit different. So with that, we got to look at kind of, a benchmark. Direct and Google organic traffic is less than a minute engagement. Google Ads is 1 minute 18. So it actually falls in line with some of the other staple sources of traffic here, which is good. And then I'm going to go into events and conversions. It shows here events is like any event that we want to track, and conversion is like, okay, which out of those events do we really want to say are valuable? And that's what we need to get more of. So I like to designate conversions as the most sticky, and then events. We don't have revenue designated because it's pretty hard to analyze and see which conversion actually led to the most revenue. That'd be so cool to come up with that model, and I'm sure we could. That's another idea. Model conversion to revenue. You need some sort of machine learning model to do it, and I'm sure that there are vendors that claim to do that. One of them being Clarivoy in this space, but whatever, I'm getting off track. So what are we looking at? We're looking at this source medium. Okay, it shows that it generated 19,000 events out of 250,000, so a little bit less than 10% of all the events. Well, that's a lot of events. What does an event mean? Well, in these events, there's page views, there's scrolls, there's clicks. Okay. But we need to focus on like the most valuable ones. And that's where conversions are going to come into play. So conversions, it drove 390. Now, when we look at that compared to your other top sources of traffic that are staple sources of traffic, 6,700, 3,200, 6,600, only 390. So that's a little bit concerning because a conversion is a really valuable item and it's not driving a whole, it's not like, even though it is the fourth top source of overall traffic, it's way less sticky of traffic, meaning that people aren't converting as much, right? You have 390 compared to scales of 6,700, 3,200, 6,200. So now that R automatically tells me we need to dive deeper and we need to see exactly what's happening. So let's do just that right now. What I'm going to do is I went to dimensions and I added an event name. So your dimension here, when I scroll down, has event name. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit event name. And then what I'm going to do is go out of dimensions and add a filter. And then I'm going to look up a session. What do I want? First user? Yeah, first user, because first user is going to be like, okay, Google Analytics registers that they haven't hit the site. Now, that could be in the last 30 days. That could be in the last 60. I'm not exactly sure on the metric of that, like when exactly Google holds on to an actual how long GA4 actually holds on to the data. I think UA used to be the time window used to be 30 days, 90 days. I don't remember. It's either between a month and 3 months, but at least it'll give us some sort of metric like, okay, in the last 28 days, how many actual first users, first time visiting the site did it generate? Let's look at iHeartMedia Conquest. That is the source of traffic. We're going to apply. So now I applied a filter, and now I see an name, event name, like what events actually happened, and I'm only looking at that source of traffic, which is really, really cool. That is the stuff we need to look at. Now, there's 14 events being tracked, so let me put all of our events on here. It's going by descending, and usually the most important get the fewest amount of views. So here's what's happening. I should say the most important get the fewest amount of actually event conversions. So let's actually go to the column should we go to conversions or event counts? Let's go to event counts because that's the amount of times that they actually occurred. So first visit 3,200. Okay, cool. 6,500 page views, 3,300 session starts, 3,500 user engagements, 2,400 scrolls. Okay, so there's some engagement. This user engagement is interesting. How is that? And that's a default GA4 event. How is that? How do they have more engagements rather than first visits? And how do they have more user engagements than session starts? Well, maybe, and I don't know the answer to this, maybe this is someone engaging, then they stop engaging, and then they re-engage. Could be. That's assuming that most sessions actually engage more than one time. So that could be. There's 2,500 scrolls. All right, now we're on new VDP page view. Only 253. Now, does that fall in line with what this was? Oh, I love Loom because it actually holds my blurs between windows. This says 737 VDP views. It says last month highlights 2,500, whereas the last 28 days VDP page views from analytics was 253. So there's either something not right with their reporting, with this reporting, but yeah, that is off by a factor of a lot, 10. So that is a concern. Now let's look at some of the harder conversion type metrics. And once we start here, like these are the conversions, right? Value trade, there was 37 value trade form submissions entered. Okay. This is another page view, which is whatever. And the reason why it's not as big of a number as these page views is because all the campaign is generating towards new rather than used. So there were 23 financing form views. There's 14 CPO page views. So again, I'm looking for the harder stuff, which is going to be click to calls. There were 6 phone calls. Okay. 6 phone calls, 37 value your trade submissions. And that's it. Oh, I'm sorry. Financing form views. This is just a view, though. They viewed the financing form. They didn't necessarily submit. There's 23. So really what we can see is there were 37 value your trade form submissions from this source of traffic. And then there was 6 calls, click to calls. So to get 37 value trades and 6 click to calls, is it worth it? And again, that is how we're debunking. We're debunking, does this stuff actually work or not? Well, that seems a little bit light to me. Okay. Of course, you want to make sure these goals, or I shouldn't say goals, that's old, events and conversions are verified, but that does seem a little bit light to me. It's like, okay, only 6 people called and then 37 submitted a form. The 37 submitting a form is pretty strong. Now, I want to question that conversion. Is it actually, is that actually set up correctly? I question that because that just doesn't seem right. But the 6 click to calls kind of seems right. So 6 click to calls and 37 form submissions. That's not bad. That's not bad. But I want to dig into, okay, now the next piece of the element is, did we actually get sales, or how can we track all these people that submitted the form from this source, right? That's the next step. But now, like, those are the 2 metrics that stand out to me, the 6 phone calls and the 37 submissions. Why? Because those are actually leads that are generated. They're not some page view. There's all these page views. Oh, 3,200 and 6,500, 30. What does it matter? You got 37 form submits and 6 phone calls, and those are the most important. Okay, now we know a lead generation statistic. So how do we know if this 37 is right or not? Well, we take our filter off. I can tell you right now. We take our filter off and we look 778 form submissions, and that says value your trade. And then all you would have to do is go look at the website and see, okay, in the back end of the website, and see how many actual value your trade forms were submitted in approximately the last month. Was it actually close to 778? And if it was, okay, well, then that's good. If it's within 10, 15, 20%, I think it's a reasonable margin of error. And this is suitable, and you can use this for tracking. If it wasn't, if it was half, well, then this is inflated. And then instead of 37 leads generated that vendor brought in, that would be 17, right? Or 18.5 leads generated. So that affects its overall ROI. So that's how you really get down to the nitty gritty and determine what's going on. And it really starts from having a solid foundation set up in a tool that can be easily logged into and unbiased, right? Unbiased. And analytics at this time, GA4 is the standard. Of course, there's flaws in it. Of course, there's better reporting and tracking and attribution, but it is the standard. It is mostly utilized in the industry, so that's what we have to go by. All right. Hopefully that helps, guys, to determine what the validity of a vendor dashboard report is, or what the true ROI is. So what we found is that, okay, even though this has really good metrics and it looks like it assisted in 9 sales, we poked some holes. It generated 6 phone calls and a questionable amount of value your trade form submissions, which we need to further check into. So is this worth it? I intuitively think it's questionable. It's very, very questionable to determine the worth here. I definitely think this assist category, I don't know, it's a pretty loose term. So, because if it really assisted, it would generate a lot more activity as far as form submissions, phone calls, things like that. So, all right, guys, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Have fun.